Hey everybody, happy Sunday. Welcome back to truck edition of the show. Hope everybody's doing all right. Wow, what a couple weeks, huh? I mean, the volatility continues, the global volatility. I mean, that is just the era we're in. It is exhausting. There's just no doubt about it. For all of us who are, quote unquote, waiting for the better world, it can really wear you down sometimes. I do think it's very healthy to detach from the news as needed and come back in and get what you need to feel like you know what's going on in the world, and then pop out again, and keep up with the press as much as possible. I have lots of thoughts about it, but I think the most direct thought is that history is dreadfully slow. The pace of history is dreadfully slow to the people who are living through it. When we desire great change, but then in the big arc, it's things happen at a reasonable scale of time. I don't know. I'm not so sure anymore. Lately, this feels very unreasonable to me, like we're almost being tortured by watching all of this chaos and not seeing a very clear sign, say, from the Department of Justice that there's going to be justice done, and that is frustrating. So if you're feeling frustrated, I share your frustration. We can only do so much, and then we have to kind of let it go for our own self-preservation, and I include myself. As usual, the January 6th committee meetings, I'm sure, will be packed full of incredible stuff. More proof of the very obvious attempt by the former president and people like the lovely Ginny Thomas to basically overthrow the government. It'll be the same thing. Fox News and the right-wing sources will do their usual deflection dance. Congress will do their usual dance, but hopefully it will have the desired effect on the electorate, which is not to make all of the MAGAs change their minds overnight and decide that they completely understand our point of view, because they don't, and they won't, and they're not planning to, and they are willfully ignorant in that sense. No, it's the middle. It's the middle you got to worry about. Not worry about, but it's the middle of the country that needs to be addressed, meaning the moderates, even the libertarians. They will swing more left, when they see that democracy is in danger, as they did for the last general election. And that's part of what gives me hope. Biden got more votes than anybody ever did. I mean, that is an incredible turnout, and I think that, especially with the SCOTUS, pending SCOTUS decision, that people are sufficiently, quote-unquote, alarmed that anyone who thought that after the last election that this MAGA nonsense and this autocracy, this global autocratic movement, is going to go away, they're no longer under that illusion. And they know that this election is as critical as the last one, and I think that we will see the Democrats gain seats as predicted, instead of even losing seats. They may lose some individual races, but on the whole, they will gain seats, and then we shall see if Biden can enact more of his agenda, and then the obfuscation of Manchin and Sinema can be overcome, because their votes will no longer be relevant to the majority in the Senate, and then we blast the filibuster, I hope, and we get Supreme Court picks either added to the court or replacements, as some have predicted, by potentially Thomas resigning because of his stupid, traitorous wife. Pardon me a second. For the merge, and any of the others. I mean, pick one. You know, Alito, what's her face, Barrett with the blank eyes. I mean, they're all cartoonish villains in my mind. Gorsuch, they're all Kavanaugh, all liars. I mean, all liars, lied right on, the floor of the Senate confirmation hearings, just bold-faced liars. They knew what they were going to do, and they're trying to do it. So, That's where we're at, right? But we see that they are still failing, because the general, and even the stuff with Putin, he is failing. I mean, the Ukraine war is way past needing to be over in my mind. I mean, I was hoping that thing was going to wrap in a couple months, but naturally, because of the stupid time that we're in, and perhaps the stubborn energy of the stubborn old energy that just doesn't want to let go, that this thing has to be protracted and stupidly painful. And I do have trouble understanding that, and I do pray to God sometimes and just say, come on, really? I mean, really? We're going to have a 2-3 year war and see all of Ukraine destroyed and all these people die or be displaced, and then it's going to all get rebuilt, and then that's progress? I mean, it's screwed up. But this is the world we're in, the world of free will, right? So, all of that said, I am still hopeful. I do believe that Putin and Russia will eventually withdraw in some fashion. They may claim a territorial grab and then say they won, which of course they won't. They'll have lost, because some estimates say that a third of their military is already wiped out, which is incredible. If they can't even take over a small country next door like Ukraine, they've been exposed as not a global power. We know all the stories about all their equipment, all their military equipment. They can't even get it serviced properly because they don't have parts for their old tanks. And tanks are almost outdated now, because tanks are slow and big, easy targets. And with the current drone technology and some of these lightweight RPGs, rocket propelled grenades that the British make, that they've been supplying to Ukraine, I think they used to weigh a shoulder fired one used to maybe weigh, 80 pounds or 100 pounds. Don't quote me on this. And now some of these cheap lightweight ones are 35 pounds. So you can literally take a rocket propelled grenade launcher on your shoulder, walk down the street like you're playing with a toy gun, and shoot at a Russian tank from less than a mile away from behind a bush, and it's got radar, and they can't even see you. They're the big dumb target. You're the easy fire. You just fire it, the missile drops over the top of the tank and goes right down the barrel where they get in. I mean, so it's tragic, but at least the Ukrainians have a way to fight. So, actually, that's not really what I came on to say, but you know me, I can ramble about anything, especially political or psychic or spiritual. So let me tell you about my dream before I get too far down the road here. I'm on my way to see my brother. We're going to watch some hockey playoffs this afternoon, because we like hockey, and also we just make jokes the whole time. So it's just an excuse. Hockey's just an excuse to make jokes. And I might argue under the right circumstances that life is just an excuse to make jokes. Because if you don't make jokes, if you're not laughing, you might be crying, right? Especially now. So I had this dream last night. It was, it reminded me of another one I had recently, where it was it was another time period. It was in America, and it could possibly have been a past life of mine. Definitely possible. I identified the time period as probably somewhere around 1875, and the reason I say that is because in the dream, the telephone had just been invented. I guess I was in around Civil War era times. I don't know what part of the country, probably the Northeast. And I was in a small community with people who, a lot of the people there were traditionally religious, but naturally they were hypocritical. They were judgmental. They were not all operating from love. They were operating from judgment. They were operating from sort of distorted interpretations of the Bible and religious belief to justify their own biases. So we know that was prevalent then. We know it is still prevalent today, though the religion is dying its own slow death as people who want to follow spiritual beliefs are getting back to the core of those spiritual beliefs, where anything that's not based on love isn't really spiritual. So but it was interesting because I had the sense that a lot of the people in this community, not all, could not be fully trusted, and that my belief system, my sense of spiritual beliefs was outside of the norm, and therefore I was not popular in this community. But there were certain people in the community who were more inherently good, operated from their highest good at all times, and so those were the people I was more allied with, if you will. And this allowed me to exist in this community, but yet with a sort of an uncomfortable awareness that many of the others did not approve of me. So anyway, I'm trying to remember the different bits, but I remember even a bit where, like, there were a lot of people living in a house, and I remember picking up a telephone, and you could hear someone talking on the lines, because they were party lines in those days, multi-party lines, multi-people lines, and you could hear one person talking, and they were trying to figure out how it worked. Like, it was almost like a sketch, like, about how old people don't know how technology works, but this was the new technology at the time. And there was even a telephone cord, and the funny part about the telephone cord was there was a phone call for someone, so I was handing off the phone from one person to another, and then there were multiple parties on the line, including people who weren't supposed to be on the line, who were listening, sort of eavesdropping, and also sort of commenting. And then I realized that there was a modern wrinkle in that the telephone had a curled connecting line on it, like more modern telephones before we went to cells. So actually, when the person who the call was meant for took the phone from me and went into the next room, they stretched the curled phone line so far that it was basically straight, and I could see that the other people were getting mad because basically the telephone cord was being stretched out to its full length. It was being warped a bit. So just funny little details like that. And but the really key part, I'm trying to remember, there were other little details. The key part for me was there was some part where I don't know who gave me sort of like it looked like a pamphlet, actually, like about like this, or almost like the kind of book you get when you're paying down a loan, like where you tear out the pages. It's like a bank book, but it was some kind of like spiritual text of some kind, and someone gave it to me, and I was reading from it, and I think that it had some good information in it that I agreed with, and the other people who were there, most of them felt like I should be more more reverent about, like, more careful with this document. But it wasn't fancy. It was just a little, almost like I said, a pamphlet. But they were like, almost like, oh my, you should be treating that like it's a brand new Bible, and like you shouldn't be bending back the pages to read it, and this and that. And in my opinion, they were missing the point, as usual, where you focus on the surface of the thing instead of the ideas within it. what is the good of a if someone really took the Bible to heart, what is the good of a pristine Bible on a shelf versus one that you actually read and you bend the pages and you use it, like, as opposed to trying to store it like an artifact. There's no purpose in that to my mind. So this book that had been given to me, this little mini book of whatever proverbs or ideas that the community felt needed to be preserved as a historical document, essentially. They were mad at me, and there was a beautiful little girl who she could have, I don't even know ages, with children, like maybe, I don't know, maybe 8, maybe 10, and she worked like kind of at the general store. And there was a part in the dream where she was bringing me what appeared to be telegrams at night, like page by page, in a winter storm, which I don't know what that's about either. And I just realized just how so cold it was, and she was dressed very beautifully, like as if she were wearing her little work uniform. And she came in and presented the telegrams to me, she had, I think they were pinned to her chest, and then she would give them to me, like there was a formality to it that was really cute. And she was all proper and super loving in presence, and she had a glow to her. And she kept, since the pages were coming in one at a time, she had to keep going out in the snowstorm to cross over to where I was in this house, possibly by candlelight, and keep bringing me these things. And I think she brought me at least 4 of them. And then I was like, oh, you don't have to keep coming back with those, or whatever I said to her. And then she saw the book, this sort of spiritual book that I had received, and she saw that the cover was kind of like a little mangled just from opening it and folding it back. And she told me, she said she could sew it. She said she could sew it so that it would be like new, and no one would ever know. Like the other townspeople would never know. And so that would get me out of trouble with these people who already had a chip about me because of my spiritual beliefs, which were, I had a belief system. I believed in a creator and in moral law, but I wasn't specifically Christian. And so, and that was awesome. And then she went to go sit in this side room that may have had a fire and a fireplace, and she started to sew, and that was kind of awesome. And then I was thinking about on the side there was some kind of other sort of little mystery going on, where I think what had happened was there had been some unusual events in this little town that would have appeared to have been mystical in nature. Let's say, for example, something that has happened to me in this incarnation that would have appeared just completely mystical to them. I don't know, what's a good example? Oh, well, I don't know if you've heard me tell the story of one time. I think it's in my forthcoming book, to be honest with you, but one time my brother almost fell out of his wheelchair when my mom was wheeling him across a parking lot after they went to lunch, and she hit a stone or some solid object in the snow, and when he fell forward in his chair, he was seatbelted in, but he would have basically planted on his face. But literally, an unseen hand came across his chest. He felt it like an arm across his chest, and basically pushed his chair upright, back to a standing position. And my mom could feel the handles of the wheelchair, of my brother's wheelchair, correct as it came up, and they even said to her pull him up, or help pull him up. And so she did, but the bulk of it was they prevented him from falling, and they corrected him. Now imagine something like that happening in 1876 in front of a group of people who are Christian, but maybe they get spooked by, maybe they would consider that like mysticism or some kind of witchcraft, or they would think there was some bad presence associated with an event like that, even when there's a good result. Okay, so that's kind of the context. So something like that had happened in this town that they associated this time with me, because things like that have happened in my life directly too, which I relate in my first book, Got Laughs at Dirty Jokes, and which I will relate more in my second book, which, as many of you already know, is titled Life is Magic. And so there was already suspicion of me, like people associated me with weird, inexplicable, mystical events, but which they thought might have come more from the quote-unquote dark side than the light side. And I found this was probably a source of frustration for me in the dream, because we have still a lot of that thinking today, 150-ish years later, though not to the same degree, and we are slowly moving towards more general spirituality as opposed to just biblical or religious-based spirituality that is strict. And like I said, with the symbolic book, it isn't about the book, the object. It's about the ideas, and it's about how you live. And this is obvious to anyone with half a brain, but yet it's not obvious to a lot of people, which is again frustrating. Like, do the best you can by others, do try to be as loving as possible at all times. Be unselfish, be generous in your gestures and in your words and in your deeds and in your support of others. And yes, of course, we all are going to fail at this at times, because that's just the nature of being human. We are imperfect, but that's the ideals. And if you try your best to live towards that, generally, then it's gonna work out for you a lot more often than not. Now, there was another part in the book that I thought was interesting, or in the dream related to the book that I thought was interesting. There was one passage in the book that stood out. I'm not exactly sure if I heard it correctly, but it was something like something kind of biblical sounding, like honor thy mother. Honor thy mother was in this book. And when I looked at my hand, I had some kind of tattoo on my hand that related to my mother and my relationship with my mother, and I took it as a symbol for our relationship and some things that we've been discussing lately, privately as a family, and between me and my mom. And so that was an interesting part of the whole, in that was kind of a more personal message for me within the dream, but sort of still fit in that model of this idea that some biblical ideas are also spiritual ideas. They're not in conflict. Whereas, like, let's say if somebody wants to look to the Bible and say whatever, gays are bad because of whatever they think is in the Bible, then that's obviously a perversion or a misinterpretation, or possibly it's something that was added to the Bible by someone who didn't mean well at another point in time. The Bible, as we know, wasn't written by God. It was written by men. And hey, maybe someday, maybe there really is a chapter by Mary Magdalene somewhere that was meant to be in the Bible, and maybe she really was like the equivalent of Jesus's wife, and history has been unkind to her for 2,000 years. It wouldn't be a surprise given all we've seen and the ways in which the old patriarchal energies have blamed women for so much that is undeserved. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that ties into the theme of the honor thy mother too in the book, but it did all strike me as very interesting to be in a discernibly different time period. It was very, there was definitely like low tech, and I had the feeling that I was in a very small town, a small community, and it wasn't entirely comfortable for me, but it wasn't entirely uncomfortable. So I guess I'll think about it a little more. As always, your feedback is most welcome on what might be, what that dream might be talking about, if it's something that I haven't already mentioned. And everybody hang in there. I mean, as I wrote to a few friends, a few of you who are viewers recently, we apparently volunteered to be here at this very, very tricky time on Earth, going through the end of a major cycle, going through this transition from the old energies in the old world to what I still believe will be a new, better world. The growing pains aren't easy, and I will admit that I've had a few, I've had a few, I won't say apocalyptic dreams in the interim that I'm not going to discuss, but a few dreams of things not going all smoothly. I'll just say that. So, what the new world looks like, it is possible for there to be a better world in the future, even if there are hardships like, say, global warming makes areas of the world and this country uninhabitable. That's still a possibility. Just because we're supposedly heading for a new world, it doesn't mean it will be without consequences. But I don't really know. I think a psychic, people who can talk to their spirit guides more directly than I do, whereas I feel I get more information in dreams, they might be able to answer that perhaps better than me. But again, I reference Jean Mayall. On her website, she has some long-term predictions for the United States and the world, for the next 100 years. And some of it feels intuitively correct to me, like that humankind levels up. Like we do manage to succeed in our light workers' mission to raise the vibration of Earth, but yet there are also consequences to the choices of the last 100 years in terms of pollution globally, climate change, infectious diseases like COVID, and other challenges. And when we get through this period of like unstable democracy, and democracy is more firm, then at least then we'll be able to better address those issues without all this nonsense, this interference and nonsense and delays, and just attempting to basically cause more suffering by preventing any progress, which is the very frustrating part for all of us. I know if you're watching this, you feel this way. And it was interesting when I was watching one of Kim Carey's videos a couple weeks ago. She was asking about how we might deal with plastics and pollution, and I mentioned in the chat that I had read how, for unknown reasons, there is a new microbe that has apparently mutated naturally in nature, that can eat plastic and convert it to organic matter. This, if it could be used on a wide scale, could be literally a global game changer. If you had an organism, a natural organism that could literally consume plastic and turn it into organic matter and excrete it, then you could literally clean up plastic all around the world. And we're at the point now where they can find microplastics, like microscopic bits of plastics in our bodies now, in our bodies, because we consume it in the food we eat, and it's just everywhere in the environment now. And it's not a danger in small amounts, but maybe over the course of a lifetime, if people accumulate a lot of plastic, it could be problematic. So this microbe could be a solution, but who knows when it will be fully exploited, technologically speaking. So when I mentioned it in the chat, it was interesting because Kim got kind of an affirmation on her end. They said something about microbes, and so it matched up, and I just thought that was kind of neat because that was just me reading about it in the paper and making note, because I'm a kind of I hunt the news for things that I think will be maybe helpful for the future, or solutions, potential solutions to problems. And another one that I may have mentioned before, and only a few people have taken me up on this, is since COVID is not apparently going away yet or anytime soon, there've been a few studies about the effect of leafy green vegetables on COVID. Apparently, seaweed in particular smothers COVID. They've done some lab tests. It can't replicate inside seaweed. There's something about that, about leafy greens. And they also included like spinach and lettuce as leafy greens in that same vein, that they think would be effective against COVID, which means literally if you eat them on a more regular basis, and they're in your bloodstream, they may potentially help counteract a COVID infection. And if this Canadian study that I read, if they're able to turn it into, like, say, a product, like, okay, you could powderize seaweed and put it into capsules, and then people could take a daily seaweed capsule, and it might actually prevent or mitigate a COVID infection. These are natural solutions that come from the environment, as most of the solutions for problems do. The world was designed by the creator, I believe, to have a lot of its solutions inherently built in. It's just that we have to find them. And so I would encourage you to consider what this information for your own life. Like, for example, for me, I'm back to wearing a mask at most indoor events. But if I'm performing, as I did last night, I bought some sushi, seaweed rolls, just the dry sheets, and I eat a sheet of seaweed before I go out to be in public, without a mask on, because I want it floating around in my bloodstream in case I encounter it unknowingly in a space, as you would, because obviously you have no way of knowing who's got it if they don't know. And they're not symptomatic yet. So these are just things we can do to, help mitigate our own risk. And also, if there's a placebo effect, if eating a sheet of seaweed makes me think I'm safe, maybe there's just a benefit to that, even if it's not as effective as this study says. But I think that the study makes perfect sense. Leafy greens, there must be something in them, I don't know if it's chlorophyll or whatever, that would smothers COVID. Just COVID can't replicate in it, and if it can't replicate in it, then it can't survive, and that's that. Okay, that's a rant. I'm here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Your thoughts, as always, are welcome. Hang in there. Yes, more difficulties ahead. Like I said, we signed up for it. We signed up for it as light workers, and it's a huge challenge. But think about it. Like, if you think about your life, wouldn't you want your life to be meaningful? And if your life is meaningful by meeting an enormous challenge, like maybe one of the great global challenges of the history of this planet, I mean, how brave is that? How awesome is that? If we signed on for this and we're doing our part and we're trying to maintain optimism and lift the world with just being as good as we can be on a day-to-day basis, then we're helping to we're helping to contribute to the cleansing of the world in our small ways, and you never know how far that goes. That's the point. So we accepted the challenge. We're here in an amazing time. As hard as it is, we should give ourselves at least a good pat on the back for meeting the challenge. So try to stay positive. I will do the same, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.